first night it happened, I thought it was just a mistake. By the third night, I knew something was wrong. By the seventh, I stopped sleeping. And by the time I finally checked my security camera footage, I realized something was inside my house that shouldn't exist. It started with a knock. Not loud, not aggressive, just 3 slow taps on my front door. I remember checking my phone out of habit. It was late, way later than I'd ever expect a delivery. I hadn't ordered anything, so at first I just ignored it. People knock on the wrong doors all the time. Not my problem. But then it came again. Same rhythm. 3 taps. Pause. 3 taps. That part stuck with me. The pattern. Too deliberate to be random. I walked to the door slowly, more curious than scared. I live alone, but I'm not the kind of person who jumps at shadows. At least, I wasn't before all of this. When I opened the door, there was a delivery guy standing there holding a paper bag. "Order for Mia?" he asked. I blinked. I didn't order anything. He frowned slightly, like he'd heard that before but didn't care enough to question it. "It's already paid for." That made me hesitate, because free food is free food, but something about it felt off. Still, I took the bag. "Thanks," I said. Even though I wasn't sure why I was thanking him, he didn't leave right away. That was the first thing that felt wrong. He just stood there for a second, looking at me like he was expecting something else. Then he said something I didn't understand at the time. "You're early today." My stomach tightened slightly. "What?" He shook his head quickly. "Nothing. Have a good night." And then he left. I stood there in the doorway longer than I should have, replaying that sentence in my head. "You're early today." It didn't make sense. I closed the door, locked it, and brought the bag into the kitchen. Inside was food I actually liked. Not random, not generic, my exact order. The same Thai place I go to every other week. Same dish, same spice level, same drink. I didn't eat it. I just stared at it. Because now it wasn't a mistake anymore. It was specific, targeted, and I had no idea how. The second night it happened again. Same time, same knock, 3 taps. Pause, 3 taps. This time I didn't open the door right away. I stood there in the hallway just listening, waiting. The knock came again, more impatient this time. I checked the peephole. Different delivery guy. Same bag. Same place logo printed on the side. My chest felt tight as I opened the door. "Order for Mia," he said, not even looking up from his phone. "I didn't order anything," I replied, trying to sound normal. "It's already paid for." Same words. Exactly the same. I hesitated again. But this time, I asked, "Who placed the order?" He shrugged. "App doesn't say." Of course it didn't. I took the bag again. And just like the first guy, he didn't leave immediately. He looked at me, really looked at me, then said something that made my skin crawl. "You look different tonight." I felt my throat tighten. "What does that mean?" He frowned slightly, like he was confused. "Nothing. Forget it." And then he walked away. I closed the door faster this time, locked it, double-checked it, and leaned against it for a second, trying to slow my breathing. "You look different tonight." What the hell did that mean? I hadn't changed anything. Same clothes, same hair, same everything. Unless, no, that didn't make sense. I shook it off and went to the kitchen, opened the bag. Same order again, exactly the same, like whoever was sending it knew me too well. By the 4th night, I didn't open the door at all. I just stood there, watching through the peephole as the delivery guy waited. Knocked, waited again, then eventually left the bag on the doorstep and walked away. I waited a full 5 minutes before opening the door. The bag was still there, warm, fresh, like it had just been placed. I didn't touch it. I just stared at it, because now I was sure of one thing. This wasn't random, and it wasn't a coincidence. Someone was doing this on purpose. Every night, same time, same order, same pattern, and somehow they thought I was expecting it. That night I didn't sleep, not even for a minute. Every sound in the house felt louder than usual. Every creak, every shift, every tiny noise made my heart jump. Around 3 in the morning, I finally got up, because something didn't feel right. I don't know how to explain it. It wasn't a sound. It wasn't anything I could point to. Just a feeling, like I wasn't alone. I walked through the house slowly, checking everything. Doors locked, windows shut, nothing out of place, nothing missing, nothing wrong, except the kitchen. I stopped in the doorway, because something was off. The bag, the one I left on the counter. It wasn't where I remembered putting it. It had been closer to the edge. Now it was centered, perfectly, like someone had moved it. My heart started pounding. No, I whispered to myself. No, you're just tired. I stepped closer. The bag was folded differently, neater, like someone had taken care opening it, and then put it back. My hands felt cold as I reached for it, opened it slowly, and my stomach dropped, because the food inside was half gone. I froze, completely froze, because I knew for a fact I hadn't touched it, not even once. The house was silent, too silent, and in that moment, I felt it again, that same feeling, stronger now, like something was watching me. I turned slowly, scanning the room. Nothing, empty, still, but my body didn't believe it, because something had been here, something was here, and I hadn't heard a thing. That's when I made the decision. I installed cameras, everywhere, living room, kitchen, hallway, front door, even inside my bedroom. I didn't care how paranoid it made me look. I needed to know what was happening, because this wasn't normal anymore. This wasn't just deliveries. This was something inside my house, something moving, something eating, something watching. And if I didn't find out what it was, I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to make it through another night. The next night, I stayed awake, lights off, sitting on my bed, watching the live camera feed on my phone, waiting, and at exactly the same time, 3 taps, pause, 3 taps. I didn't move, didn't breathe, just watched. The delivery guy left the bag again after a minute. And then, nothing, silence. For a long time, too long, I started to feel stupid. Maybe I really was overreacting. Maybe I moved the bag without realizing. Maybe the kitchen camera flickered, just for a second. My breath caught in my throat. The screen glitched, then came back. Everything looked normal, until it didn't, because the bag was gone. I shot up from the bed, my heart racing. What the hell? I hadn't moved. No one had come through the front door. No sound. No footsteps. Nothing. My hands were shaking as I switched to the hallway camera. Empty. Living room. Empty. Front door. Still closed. Then slowly, I tapped on the bedroom camera, and my entire body went cold, because the door behind me was open, just slightly, and I knew I had closed it. I didn't move. Couldn't. My eyes were locked on the screen, on that tiny live feed from the bedroom camera, where the door behind me, the one I knew I had closed, was now slightly open. A thin, dark line cut through the frame where the hallway light barely reached inside. I felt my chest tighten so hard it almost hurt to breathe. No, I whispered, barely hearing my own voice, because I knew something for sure. I hadn't gotten up. I hadn't opened that door. And there was no one else in the house. At least, there wasn't supposed to be. My body felt frozen, but my brain was screaming at me to turn around. Just turn your head. Look. But I couldn't, because as long as I didn't look, there was still a tiny chance this was some kind of glitch, some kind of delay, some stupid explanation I could laugh off later. But the moment I turned, it would become real. The screen flickered again, just slightly, and that's when I saw it. Movement. Inside my room. On the camera. Something shifted in the corner of the frame. Too fast to fully see, but enough to make my stomach drop. My breath caught. Slowly, very slowly, I started turning my head. Every muscle in my body felt tight, like it was resisting the movement. But I forced it, inches at a time, until I was finally looking at the door. It was open, not wide, just enough. And beyond it, darkness, nothing else. No figure, no shadow, no movement, just the hallway, empty. My heart was pounding so loud I thought it might give me away, even though there was no one there to hear it. "You're imagining things," I whispered. "You're just tired." I said it again and again, like if I repeated it enough times, it would become true. But something inside me didn't believe it, because the camera didn't imagine things. The camera saw something, and now, that something was inside my house. I didn't sleep at all that night. I kept the lights on, every single one. Sat on my bed with my phone in my hand, switching between camera feeds every few seconds, like if I stopped watching, I'd miss something important. Nothing else happened. No more flickers. No more movement. No sounds. No footsteps. No doors opening. Just silence. The kind of silence that makes everything worse, because it gives your mind space to imagine things that might be hiding just out of sight. By morning, my eyes burned and my body felt heavy, but I didn't feel tired anymore. I felt wired, like adrenaline had replaced sleep. I got up slowly, scanning every corner of my room before stepping out into the hallway. Everything looked normal, too normal. The kitchen, the living room, the front door, all exactly how they should be, except the bag. It was gone, completely gone, not on the counter, not in the trash, nowhere, like it had never existed. I stood there staring at the empty space where it had been, trying to make sense of it. There has to be a logical explanation, I muttered, but there wasn't, because no explanation made sense. Not anymore. That afternoon I checked the camera footage again. Not the live feed, the recorded footage, because if something had happened, it had to be there, right? I sat on my couch, phone in hand, heart racing as I scrolled back through the timeline. Hours of nothing, empty rooms, stillness, until I reached the moment. The glitch, the flicker. I held my breath and hit play. The kitchen camera first. The bag sat on the counter, untouched, everything normal. Then, a flicker. The screen distorted for half a second. And when it came back, the bag was gone. Just gone. No movement. No one entering. No sound. Nothing. Like it had been erased. My stomach twisted. "That's not possible," I whispered. I rewound it. Watched again. Same thing. Flicker. Gone. I switched to the hallway camera. Nothing. Living room. Nothing. Front door. Still closed. Locked. No one came in. No one left. Then, I opened the bedroom camera footage. My hands were shaking now, because this was the one that mattered. This was where I saw the door open. I found the moment. Hit play. First, everything was normal. The door was closed. The room was empty. I was sitting on the bed, staring at my phone. Then, the flicker, stronger this time. The screen glitched, and for a split second, I saw it. My breath stopped, because in that flicker, there was someone standing behind me. Not clear, not detailed, just a shape, a figure, in my room, right behind me. And then, the image snapped back, and the door was open. I dropped my phone. It hit the floor with a loud crack, but I barely noticed, because my mind was stuck on one thing. I wasn't alone. I hadn't been alone. And whatever that thing was, it had been standing right behind me, watching. I didn't know what to do. Call the police? Tell them what? That something invisible is stealing my food and opening doors? They'd think I was insane. Maybe I was. But the footage was real. I picked my phone back up, replayed it again, and again, trying to get a clearer look, trying to see a face, a detail, anything. But every time, it was the same, just a shape, presence, and then nothing, until On the fifth replay, I noticed something new, something I hadn't seen before. My heart started racing again, because right before the flicker, the figure moved, just slightly, and for a fraction of a second, the light hit its face. Not fully, not clearly, but enough. Enough to see something that made my entire body go cold. Because it wasn't a stranger. It wasn't some random person. It wasn't someone I didn't recognize. It was me, or something that looked exactly like me. Same hair, same face, same features, but wrong. Completely wrong. Because the expression was empty.
No emotion.
No life. Just blank. Like it wasn't human. I felt like I was gonna throw up.
No. Iwis parat.
No, that's not possible. But the footage didn't change. It didn't care what I believed. It showed me exactly what was there. And what was there was something wearing my face. That night I didn't wait. I didn't sit in bed. I didn't watch the cameras. I left, grabbed my keys, didn't even turn off the lights, just walked out of the house and drove. I didn't know where I was going. Just away. Far enough to feel safe. I ended up sitting in my car in a grocery store parking lot, staring at nothing, trying to process what I had seen, trying to make sense of something that didn't make sense. After a while, my phone buzzed. I froze, slowly picked it up. Unknown number. A message. Just one line. My hands started shaking before I even opened it. Because deep down, I already knew. This wasn't random. This wasn't coincidence. This was connected. I opened the message, and my entire body went numb. Because it said, "Why did you leave early?" I didn't go back home that night. There was no way I could. Not after what I had seen. Not after that message. Why did you leave early? That wasn't a guess. That wasn't coincidence. Whoever or whatever sent that knew exactly what I had done. It knew I had left the house. It knew I wasn't there when I was supposed to be, which meant one thing I couldn't ignore anymore. Something expected me to be home, and something noticed when I wasn't. I sat in my car for almost an hour after reading that message, staring at the screen like it might change if I looked long enough. Didn't. It just stayed there, simple and calm, like a normal text message.
No threats. No explanation.
Just a question that felt way too personal. I tried calling the number. It didn't go through. Not even a ring. Just an instant failure, like the number didn't exist. That made it worse. Because if it wasn't real, then how did it message me? I forced myself to breathe, slow and controlled. Even though my chest felt tight, panicking wasn't going to help. I needed to think clearly, even if everything about this situation felt completely unreal. The first thought that came to my mind was obvious. I needed proof. Real proof. Not just something on my phone that could be dismissed or explained away. Something I could show someone else. Something that made this real outside my own head. Because part of me, no matter how small, was still trying to convince myself this was some kind of breakdown. Some kind of stress reaction. Something psychological. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. The footage didn't lie. That thing in my room, it looked exactly like me. And now it was texting me. I looked at the time and realized something else that made my stomach drop. It was almost the same time the deliveries usually came. Which meant if the pattern continued, something was about to happen again. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, my mind racing. Going back home felt like the worst possible decision I could make. But at the same time, staying away wasn't helping either. Because if that thing was inside my house, what was it doing right now? Was it still there? Or had it already left? The thought hit me suddenly. What if it wasn't stuck inside? What if it could move freely? What if the reason no one ever saw it was because it didn't stay in one place? My chest tightened again. That would explain the message. That would explain how it knew I left. I didn't like where my thoughts were going. Not at all. But I couldn't ignore them anymore. After a long moment, I made a decision I immediately regretted. I was going back. Not to stay. Not to sleep. Just to check. just to see if anything had changed, to confirm whether it was still there or not. I told myself I would stay in the car, just watch from outside, keep my distance. That was the plan. It didn't stay the plan. The drive back felt longer than it actually was. Every streetlight, every shadow, every passing car made me more aware of how alone I was in this. When I finally turned onto my street, something immediately felt off. My house looked normal, lights still on, curtains still drawn, but there was a car parked in front of it. Car I didn't recognize. My stomach dropped. I slowed down, pulling over a few houses away so I wouldn't be obvious. The car was dark, clean, no visible damage, no stickers, nothing that stood out. Just there, parked like it belonged. My mind immediately jumped to the worst possible conclusion. Someone was inside, but not just someone. That thing. Or worse, someone connected to it. I sat there for a minute trying to decide what to do. My hands were already shaking again, but this time it wasn't just fear. It was something else too. Anger. Because whatever was happening, it had crossed a line. It wasn't just watching anymore. It was acting. And I wasn't going to just sit there and let it happen. I got out of the car. Every step toward the house felt heavier than the last. My heartbeat was so loud it almost drowned out everything else. As I got closer, I noticed something else. The front door was slightly open. Not wide, just enough to notice. A cold wave moved through my body instantly. I knew I had locked it. I always locked it. There was no way I would have left it like that, which meant something had opened it. I stopped a few feet away, staring at the door, trying to decide if I was about to make the worst decision of my life. But before I could think too long, I heard it. A voice. From inside the house. My voice. I froze. Every muscle in my body locked up as I listened. It was faint, like it was coming from deeper inside, but it was clear enough to recognize. Same tone. Same rhythm. Same way of speaking. There was no mistake. It was me, talking. Inside my own house. I felt like my brain couldn't process it. Like it was rejecting what I was hearing because it didn't fit any version of reality that made sense. But it didn't stop. The voice kept going. And then, another voice responded. A man's voice. Calm. Casual. Like they were having a normal conversation. My stomach twisted hard. Because that meant two things. That thing wasn't alone. And whoever was inside was talking to it like it was normal. Like it belonged there. I stepped closer to the door without thinking, just enough to hear better. You left earlier than expected, my voice said from inside. The man laughed lightly. Yeah, she's getting suspicious. Me. They were talking about me, like I wasn't even there, like I wasn't the one who lived in that house. My chest felt tight again, but this time it wasn't just fear. It was something deeper, something colder, because suddenly, a thought hit me that I couldn't ignore. What if that thing wasn't trying to replace me? What if it already had? I pushed the door open slowly, just a little more, enough to see inside. The living room was empty, lights on, everything in place, normal, except for the voices. They were coming from the kitchen. I stepped inside, quiet, careful, every step controlled. The voices got clearer, and then, I turned the corner, and saw it, saw her, saw me, standing in my kitchen, facing a man I had never seen before. And the worst part wasn't that she looked like me. It was how perfect it was. Every detail, every feature, even the way she stood. It was identical, like I was looking at a reflection that didn't belong to me anymore. The man noticed me first. His eyes shifted past her, and locked onto me. And instead of shock, instead of confusion, he smiled, slowly, like he had been expecting this, like I was the one out of place. My copy turned her head next, and when our eyes met, she smiled too, but there was no emotion in it, just something empty, something wrong. And then she said the one thing that made everything inside me break. You weren't supposed to come back yet. I don't remember deciding to run. My body just did it. 1 second I was standing there, staring at my own face, smiling back at me like it knew something I didn't, and the next, I was backing up so fast I almost tripped over the rug in the hallway. My heart was pounding so violently it felt like it was trying to escape my chest. You weren't supposed to come back yet. Those words kept replaying in my head, louder every time. Not why are you here? Not who are you? Not even what's going on. No, it knew exactly who I was, and it expected me to be somewhere else. That was the part that broke something inside me, because it meant one thing I couldn't ignore anymore. This wasn't random. This wasn't some glitch or hallucination or stress-induced breakdown. This was organized, planned, timed, like my life had a schedule, and I had just shown up at the wrong time. I hit the front door and practically threw it open, stepping outside so fast I didn't even remember touching the handle. Cold air hit my face, but it didn't calm me down. Nothing could calm me down. Not after that. I didn't stop moving until I was back in my car, slamming the door shut and locking it immediately, like that would somehow protect me. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely get the key into the ignition. Think, I whispered to myself. Just think. But my mind was chaos, because everything I thought I understood about reality had just been destroyed in a matter of seconds. There was something inside my house, something that looked exactly like me, something that talked like me, and now, something that was living my life when I wasn't there. I forced myself to look back at the house. The door was still slightly open. The lights were still on. Everything looked exactly the same as it always did. Except now I knew it wasn't. And then, I saw movement. My breath caught, because she stepped into the doorway. My copy, standing exactly where I had just been seconds ago, watching me, her head tilted slightly, like she was studying me, like she was trying to understand something. And then, she raised her hand, and waved, not aggressively, not mockingly, just casually, like this was normal, like I was the one acting strange. A cold wave ran through my entire body, because something about that gesture felt familiar, too familiar, like I had done that exact same thing before without thinking. My grip on the steering wheel tightened. Who the hell are you? I whispered. She didn't answer. Of course she didn't. She just stood there for a moment longer, then slowly stepped back inside, and closed the door. I didn't drive away immediately. I should have. Every instinct in my body was screaming at me to get as far from that house as possible. But I couldn't, because now, I needed answers more than I needed safety. That was the shift. Fear was still there, strong, loud, but something else had taken its place beside it. Obsession, because I had just seen something impossible, and I wasn't going to walk away without understanding it. Not anymore. I grabbed my phone and opened the camera app again, pulling up the live feed. If she was inside, I needed to see what she was doing. The screen loaded. Living room camera. Empty.
Kitchen camera.
And my breath stopped, because she was still there, standing exactly where I had seen her, facing the man, like nothing had happened, like I had never walked in, like I had never existed. The man was talking again, his voice calm, steady. She saw you, he said. I know, she replied. My voice, perfect, identical. She wasn't supposed to, he continued. You need to adjust the timing. Timing, that word again, like this was some kind of routine, some kind of schedule. She left earlier than expected, my copy said. That's why she saw me. My stomach twisted. They were still talking about me like I wasn't even a person, like I was a variable, a mistake in a system. So fix it, the man said. You know what happens if this keeps happening. A pause. Not long, but long enough to feel heavy. I know, she said quietly. Something about her tone changed. Just slightly. Not fear. Not concern. Just acknowledgement. Like she had heard this before. Like this wasn't the first time something had gone wrong. My chest tightened. because that meant one thing. There had been others. Before me. Before this. And they hadn't figured it out. Or they had, and it hadn't mattered. "What do you want me to do with her?" she asked. My heart stopped. The man didn't hesitate. "Nothing yet," he said. "Let's see how she reacts." A cold chill ran through my body. Because suddenly, I wasn't just watching anymore. I was part of it. They were watching me too. Studying me. Waiting. Like I was some kind of test. Some kind of experiment. I felt sick. Actually sick. Because everything about this felt wrong in a way I couldn't explain. Not just scary. Not just confusing. Wrong. Like reality itself wasn't behaving the way it was supposed to. Like there were rules I didn't understand. And I had just broken one of them. I switched to the hallway camera. Empty. Living room again. Empty. Front door. Closed. Then back to the kitchen. And my heart dropped. Because she was gone. Just gone. The man was still there. Standing alone now. Looking around the room slowly. And then, he turned his head slightly. And looked directly at the camera. My stomach dropped so hard it felt like it disappeared completely. Because the camera wasn't obvious. It wasn't visible unless you knew exactly where to look. But he knew. He smiled again. Slow. Deliberate. Like he was acknowledging me. Like he knew I was watching. And then he said something that made my entire body go numb. "Stop hiding." I dropped the phone onto the passenger seat like it had burned me. My breathing turned sharp, uneven. Because that wasn't coincidence. That wasn't guessing. He knew I was there. He knew I was watching. And worse, he wanted me to come back. I looked up at the house again. And that's when I noticed something that made everything inside me go cold. The lights inside were turning off. One by one. Living room. Dark. Kitchen. Dark. Hallway. Dark. Until the entire house was black. Completely black. Like nothing was inside anymore. Like it was empty. But I knew better. Because now, I understood something I hadn't before. This wasn't just about replacing me. This wasn't just about copying me. This was something bigger. Something controlled. Something that followed rules. Schedules. Timing. And I had just disrupted it. Which meant, they were going to adjust. And whatever that adjustment was, it wasn't going to be good for me. My phone buzzed again. I didn't want to look. But I did anyway. Same unknown number. Another message. Short. Simple. And somehow worse than the last one. "You're not supposed to see this part." I stared at the words, my mind racing. Because now the question wasn't just what is happening. It was, what happens to people who find out? I didn't drive away. I should have. Any normal person would have left, gone somewhere safe, called someone, done something rational. But I couldn't. Not anymore. Because whatever this was, it had already wrapped itself around me. It wasn't just happening to me. It was happening because of me. "You're not supposed to see this part." That message kept echoing in my head like a warning I was too late to understand. Not supposed to see what part? The copy? The man? The fact that my life was being used like some kind of scheduled program? I picked up my phone again slowly, forcing my hands to stop shaking long enough to open the camera feed. The house was completely dark now. Every room. Every angle. Nothing but shadows and faint outlines of furniture. But it didn't feel empty. Felt paused. Like something had stopped mid-process and was waiting. I don't know what made me do it, but I zoomed in on the kitchen camera again, squinting at the darkness. First, there was nothing. Just the counter. The cabinets. The space where the bag had been the night before. Then something shifted. So small I almost missed it. A silhouette. Standing in the far corner of the kitchen. Perfectly still. Watching. My breath caught instantly. My body going rigid as I stared at the screen. The shape didn't move, didn't react, didn't even seem to breathe. It just stood there like it had always been there. Like it belonged in the dark. And then slowly, I stepped forward. Into the faint light from the window. And I saw her again. Me. Same face. Same body. same everything. But something was different now. She wasn't blank anymore. She was smiling. Not the empty, emotionless smile from before. This one had something behind it. Something aware. Something that knew exactly what it was doing. And it was looking directly at the camera. And me. My stomach twisted violently. Because in that moment, I realized something that made everything worse. She wasn't just aware of me. She was reacting to me. Like this was a game. Like she was waiting for me to make the next move. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to stay still, even though every part of me wanted to throw the phone and run. Okay, I whispered. Okay, if you can see me, then what do you want? The question sounded ridiculous out loud. But deep down, I already knew the answer wasn't going to be simple. She tilted her head slightly, almost like she had heard me, even though I hadn't said it loud enough for any microphone to pick up. And then, she walked out of frame. My chest tightened instantly. Where are you going? I whispered, switching cameras quickly. Hallway. Nothing. Living room. Nothing. Front door. Still closed. Bedroom. Empty. I checked every angle again. Faster this time, my heart racing harder with every second that passed. She was gone. Completely gone. Like she had disappeared into the house itself. And that's when I realized something even worse. The man. He wasn't on any camera either. Which meant they weren't just moving around the house. They were moving around the cameras. Avoiding them. On purpose. A cold wave of understanding hit me all at once. They knew the layout. They knew where the blind spots were. They knew exactly how to stay out of sight. Which meant this wasn't new to them. They had done this before. Probably many times. My hands started shaking again, but this time it wasn't just fear. It was anger, because whatever they were doing, they thought I was still confused, still scared, still reacting. But I wasn't anymore. Not completely, because now I understood something important. If they had a system, then systems could be broken. I took a deep breath, forcing my thoughts into something more focused. They expected me to follow a pattern. Stay home. Ignore the deliveries. Sleep at a certain time. Not question anything. But I had already broken that pattern. And they didn't like it. Which meant I had leverage. Not much, but enough to test. My phone buzzed again. I didn't hesitate this time. I opened the message immediately. You're making this harder than it needs to be. I let out a slow breath. Good, I muttered. Then, without thinking too much about it, I typed back. Then explain it. For a second, nothing happened.
No typing bubble.
No response. Just silence. And then, another message appeared. You wouldn't understand. I felt a small, bitter laugh escape me. Try me, I whispered, typing again. I already saw her. I already saw you. You're not hiding anything anymore. This time, the response came faster. You saw what you weren't supposed to see. Same phrase, same tone, like it was scripted, like it wasn't even a real conversation. That made something click in my head, because suddenly, this didn't feel like a person texting me. It felt like a system responding. Like whatever this was, it had rules it couldn't break. Which meant if I pushed the right way, I might get something real out of it. I typed again, slower this time, more deliberate. Then what happens to people who see it? This time, the pause was longer, much longer, long enough to make my chest tighten again. Because for the first time, it felt like I had asked something they didn't want to answer. And then finally, the reply came. They get replaced. My entire body went cold. I stared at the screen, my brain struggling to process what I had just read. Replaced. Not removed. Not silenced. Replaced. Like swapped. Like erased and rewritten. I looked back at the house instinctively, my pulse spiking again. Because suddenly, that copy of me wasn't just something pretending. It wasn't just mimicking. It was taking over. Living my life. Step by step. And if that was true, then where did the original go? My stomach twisted hard. because I didn't want to know the answer to that. But I needed to. I typed again, slower now. Careful. And what happens to the original? This time, there was no pause.
No hesitation.
The response came instantly. You already know. I felt something inside me drop completely. Because yeah, I did. I just didn't want to admit it. My breathing turned shallow as I looked back at the house again. Dark. Silent. Still. But now it didn't feel like a place I lived. It felt like something else entirely. Something controlled. Something designed. Something that didn't need me anymore. Because it already had a better version. My phone buzzed one last time. I didn't even want to look. But I did anyway. And this time, it wasn't a message. It was a picture. Sent from the same unknown number. My hands trembled as I opened it. And my entire world stopped. Because it was a photo taken inside my house. In my bedroom. From an angle that wasn't covered by any camera. And in the picture, I was asleep. Lying in my bed. Peaceful. Still. Like nothing had ever been wrong. Like I had never left. Like I had never even woken up. I dropped the phone again. My breathing completely out of control now. Because there was only one explanation left. One possibility that made everything make sense. And it was the worst one of all. I wasn't watching my life being taken. I had already lost it. I stared at the photo until my eyes started burning. Because no matter how many times I blinked, it didn't change. It was me, in my bed, asleep, not restless, not disturbed, not reacting, just peacefully asleep. Like everything was normal. Like none of this had ever happened. My throat felt dry as I tried to breathe. Because there was only one question left that mattered. If that was me in the picture, then who the hell was I right now? My hands started shaking again, worse than before. I picked the phone back up slowly, zooming in on the image, searching for something, anything, that proved it was fake. But there were details. Too many details. The way my blanket was folded. The position of my hand. Even the tiny scratch on my wrist from earlier that week. It was accurate. Perfectly accurate. And then I noticed something that made my stomach drop even harder. The timestamp. It wasn't from earlier. It wasn't from before I left. It was recent. Just minutes ago. My chest tightened so sharply I had to grip the steering wheel again.
No, y whispered.
No, that's not possible. Because I wasn't in that bed. I was here. Sitting in my car. Wide awake. Terrified. But the picture didn't lie. It showed something else. Another version of me. Still inside. Still living the routine. Still following the pattern. And suddenly, everything made sense in a way I didn't want it to. The deliveries. The timing. The conversations. You left earlier than expected. She saw you. You need to adjust the timing. They weren't talking about me as a person. They were talking about me as a schedule. A version. A role. And I had stepped out of it. That's why everything broke. That's why I saw her. That's why I wasn't supposed to. Because I wasn't the active one anymore. I was the leftover. A glitch. Something that wasn't meant to exist. My breathing turned shallow as that realization settled in. Because if I wasn't the real one anymore, then what happens to something that isn't supposed to exist? My phone buzzed again. I didn't hesitate this time. I opened it immediately. You're outside. I froze. Slowly, very slowly. I lifted my head and looked toward the house. All the lights were still off. Everything still dark. Still silent. But now I knew better. Because they weren't blind. They weren't guessing. They knew exactly where I was. And then, the front door opened. Slowly. With that same quiet, controlled movement. My heart started pounding again as I stared at it. Waiting. Not breathing. And then, she stepped out. My copy. Walking down the steps like she owned the place. Like she belonged there. Like I didn't. Her movements were calm. Natural. Smooth. Not rushed. Not aggressive. Just confident. Like this was normal. like she had done this before. She stopped at the bottom of the steps and looked directly at me. And for the first time, her expression wasn't empty. It wasn't emotionless. It was something else entirely. Something knowing. Like she understood everything I had just figured out. Like she had been waiting for me to reach this point. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to open the car door. I didn't even remember deciding to do it. I just did, stepping out slowly, my legs feeling weaker than they should. We stood there, facing each other. Same height, same face, same everything. But only one of us belonged. And I didn't know which one it was anymore. You shouldn't be here, she said. My voice.
Perfectly mine.
But colder, sharper. Neither should you. I shot back, my voice shaking despite trying to control it. She tilted her head slightly, like she found that interesting. I am here, she said simply. That hit harder than anything else. Because it wasn't an argument. It wasn't defensive. It was a fact. And I didn't have anything to counter it with. Then what am I? I asked. For the first time, she smiled slightly. Not wide, not fake, just enough to feel unsettling. You're the version that noticed. My chest tightened. Noticed what? Her eyes stayed locked on mine. The pattern. A cold wave moved through me again. So what happens now? I asked. She didn't answer immediately. She just looked at me for a long moment, like she was studying something, evaluating, deciding, and then she said something that made everything inside me go still. Normally, you would disappear. My heart skipped. Normally, she nodded once. Normally, you wouldn't get this far. Silence. Heavy. Suffocating. Then why am I still here? I asked. She took a step closer. Slow. Deliberate. And my body didn't move. I couldn't tell if it was fear or something else. You adapted, she said. Adapted to what? Her expression didn't change. To awareness. That word hit differently, because it didn't sound like a threat. It sounded like a classification. Like I wasn't just a person anymore. I was something else. Something outside the system. And what does that mean? I whispered. She stopped just a few feet away from me. Close enough that I could see every detail. Every flaw. Every identical feature. It means you're not part of the schedule anymore, she said. My stomach dropped. And now, she continued calmly, you have a choice. A choice. That didn't sound right, because nothing about this felt like I had any control. What choice? I asked. Her eyes didn't leave mine. You can try to take your place back. My breath caught. Or, she smiled again, slightly wider this time. Or you can become something else. Silence. The kind that stretches too long. Because I understood what she was implying. And neither option felt real. Take my place back how? I asked. Her expression stayed calm. By replacing me. My chest tightened instantly. And if I don't? She didn't hesitate. Then you disappear. There it was. Simple. Clean. Final. Like it had always been that way. Like there were no exceptions.
No escape.
Just two outcomes. Replace. Or be erased. I felt my mind spinning, trying to process something that didn't follow any logic I understood. But deep down, I already knew the truth. Because this wasn't about survival anymore. It was about identity. About existence. About who gets to live the life that was already mine. And as I stood there, looking at her, looking at me, I realized something terrifying. She wasn't trying to fight me. She wasn't trying to stop me. She was offering me the same thing she had already taken. A role, place, a version. And all I had to do was decide who I was willing to become. My phone buzzed one last time in my hand. I didn't look at it right away, because I already knew. Whatever was on that screen was going to change everything. I slowly lifted it, unlocked it, and read the message. Time to choose. I looked up again. At her. At myself. At the life that wasn't mine anymore. And for the first time since all of this started, I smiled. Because maybe, just maybe, I wasn't the one who was supposed to disappear. If this messed with your head even a little, drop a comment telling me what you would choose. Replace her or disappear, and hit subscribe because the next story I'm dropping is even darker than this one.